So a few years ago, some researchers conducted an experiment at Princeton Theological Seminary with a group of students who were studying to be pastors, theologians, and professors of religion. They took a bunch of them and they put them in a room and gave them a very short time to prepare a message on the biblical passage of the Good Samaritan. Well, this guy gets beaten up, left for dead on the side of the road. God's people kind of walk on by, and his enemy picks him up and takes care of him and nurses him back to health. And then at the end of that time, they told the students that they were running late and they needed to hurry across campus to another building to give their talk. And along the path between the building where they prepared the talk and the one where they were supposed to give it, they placed this homeless, disheveled, sick-looking guy. And much to their dismay, the researchers discovered that very few of the seminary students who were going to deliver a talk about the passage of the Good Samaritan even stopped at all to talk to this homeless guy. A whole bunch of them just cruised right on by. A couple of them stopped and actually helped, and they were late for the lecture and didn't care. And a number of them asked, "Hey man, are you okay?" And he coughed and said, I will be. And then they went on their way. That's a pretty heartbreaking story. I mean, that's not, what you want to find, although I'm sure it's what they expected to find. And the irony is pretty thick. Like, going to deliver a message about how God calls his people not to ignore the needy and the broken while walking right past the needy, broken guy along the way. But I have some grace for these students because I look at life and I think it's pretty easy for us to do the same thing. It is. I think it's easy for us to get so caught up in our own stuff and our own agenda and our own busyness. And if we're brutally honest, to get so caught up in our own pretty comfortable lives that we just cruise right on by the need in our world. I don't know for me, I don't know about you, but I know for me, sometimes I don't even see it. And I know, on an intellectual level, I know that I would not need to look very hard or need to look very long to find a whole bunch of need in front of me, but I don't see it because I'm not looking. And as long as I'm not sinning too terribly while I'm not looking and not seeing it, then it's pretty easy for me to convince myself that I'm being a pretty good Christian and that I'm living it out pretty well. But then I open my Bible and it looks like time and time again that it tells me that if I'm existing in that space, where faith is in my head, but it hasn't migrated into my heart and my hands, and I think I'm doing pretty well, then I'm suffering from a severe lack of spiritual self-awareness. And James talks about this in the first chapter of his book. I love it. He says, don't merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. And James says, if we let it move into our hearts and our hands and we actually do what it says, like what we know God's calling us to, we know God's inviting us to be a part of in the world. It may be difficult on the front end, but what we're going to find on the back end is blessing that blows our minds. And he writes this, I love it. He says, if your faith doesn't inspire action, your faith is completely worthless. But here's what faith that's worth something looks like. He says, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and blameless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. And there's this incredible vision that James paints where he just says basically, hey, talking a good game is useless. If we're talking a talk that we're not walking, then we have a severe self-awareness issue. And that goes for any walk of life, any space in life, but particularly in our faith. If we're saying that we believe things intellectually, but it isn't massively changing the way that our hearts feel about the world and the actions that our hands take in the world, then we're missing it. We're missing out, because this picture that God wants us to have of who he created us to be, of what it looks like to live into the fullness of our created purpose, of what it looks like to live the epic stories of purpose and meaning and abundance that he created us for, to be a part of what he's doing in the world, to set all things right and make all things new. This picture that God wants us to have is a picture of action. It's a picture of actively seeking out the needy, the homeless, and the loveless, the broken people in our world, and doing something about their plight, while at the same time keeping ourselves and our hearts and our minds pure and blameless and away from sin in a dark and godless culture. And so my prayer this week for myself, and I want to invite you to pray it with me, is that I would have open eyes and a soft heart. That God would just open my eyes to see the need around me, to see the spaces where He is at work even now to set things right and make things new. And it would soften my heart for it. That I wouldn't get so caught up in my own busyness and my own agenda and my own comfort and my own ease that I could walk on by without feeling compelled to do something about it. So I'm just praying that God would open my eyes and give me a soft heart, because I want to live my created purpose. I want to live the story that He has for me. I want to live the difference-making, purpose-filled, abundant life that God created me for. And I want to be a part of what He's doing to set the world right. And it's so easy not to. It's so easy to just do our own thing and live in our own comfortable worlds and walk right on by. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to give an account. Jesus said, like, we're all going to stand before the judgment seat, and He's going to say to us, whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. Whatever you did not do for the least of these, you did not do for me. And so my prayer is that I could see Jesus in the needy people around me. And that we all could, because I think if we can get to that space where our faith migrates from our heads into our hearts and our hands, it isn't going to be easy, and it isn't going to be simple, and it isn't going to be quick, but it's going to be so good. So good as we live out meaning, and we live out purpose, and we live out these great stories that God has for us as He invites us to be a part of what He's doing to make all things new and set all things right. And that is a life, and that's a faith worth living.